The unexpected cocktail. Viara Tan's head pounded as she slowly regained consciousness. The last thing she remembered was celebrating with her human crewmates after a successful mission, downing a few shots of potent human liquor. Now, something felt terribly wrong. Her body was on fire, every nerve ending screaming with an aching need she couldn't ignore. She forced her eyes open, wincing at the bright lights of the med bay. Dr. Seamers, the ship's medic, loomed over her, his weathered face etched with concern. What happened? Viara croaked, her voice raspy. She tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her back down. You had a bad reaction to the whiskey, Seamers said. Your unique physiology couldn't handle it. Viara groaned. The Aurelans, her people, were close cousins to humans, but with some key differences, like her crimson hair, pointed ears, and the iridescent third eye in the center of her forehead. That eye fluttered open now, taking in the doctor's aura. Normally, it glowed a soothing green, but now it pulsed an agitated red. There's something you're not telling me, she said, narrowing her eyes. What is it? Seamers sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. It seems the alcohol interacted badly with the standard-issue military performance enhancement serum all soldiers get. It boosts strength, stamina, reflexes, but in you, he trailed off, looking away. Viara's heart raced as realization dawned. The fire raging through her veins, the desperate ache building in her core. She knew these symptoms all too well from her species' mating cycles, but they were never this intense. It's triggered an extreme arousal response, Seema said clinically, still avoiding her gaze. Your hormones are off the charts. If we don't get it under control soon, you could go into shock. Viara wanted to scream, to cry, to break something. This couldn't be happening. Light years from home, the only Aurelan on a ship full of humans. The shame of it threatened to overwhelm her. What can we do? She asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. I've consulted the database on alien physiology, Seamus said. There's a sedative I can give you that should help take the edge off. But he met her gaze at last, his blue eyes full of sympathy. The only thing that will truly relieve the symptoms is, well, finding a willing partner to help you through this. Viara squeezed her eyes shut, hot tears leaking from the corners. The thought of propositioning one of her crewmates, of them seeing her in such a vulnerable, animalistic state, made her stomach churn. But what choice did she have? She couldn't very well take matters into her own hands in the med bay. I need some time to think, she said. Seamus nodded. Of course, I'll give you some privacy. Just hit the call button if you need anything. He stepped out, leaving Viara alone with her thoughts and the raging inferno threatening to consume her. She curled into a ball, having her knees to her chest as silent sobs racked her body. Some legendary soldier she was, felled by a few shots of human booze. If her superiors back on Aurelia found out about this, she'd be stripped of her rank and sent home in disgrace. No, she resolved, gritting her teeth against a fresh wave of need. She would find a way to handle this discreetly, with minimal involvement from the crew. Viara Tachin was nothing if not resourceful. She'd faced down enemy troops, hostile wildlife, and the cold void of space. She could deal with her own treacherous biology. Inhaling deeply, she uncurled her body and sat up, ignoring the answering throb between her legs. First things first, she needed to get out of this med bay and back to her quarters. Grabbing a hospital gown, she slipped it on over her sweat-soaked underclothes and peeked out into the corridor. The coast was clear. She darted out, keeping to the shadows, praying she wouldn't run into anyone. Luck was on her side, and she made it to her small cabin without incident. Shutting the door behind her, Viara leaned against it, her chest heaving. Her room, with its sparse furnishings and few personal effects, had never felt more like a sanctuary. Here, at least she could suffer through this in private. Stripping off the hospital gown, she stumbled to the bed and collapsed onto it. The cool sheets felt amazing against her feverish skin. Unable to help herself, Viara ran her hands over her body, trying to ease the ache. A whimper escaped her as her fingers grazed over the sensitive peaks of her breasts, the taut plane of her stomach. This was wrong, shameful. If any of her crewmates knew she was debasing herself like this, they'd never look at her the same way again. But she was past caring. Her hips rocked restlessly against the mattress, desperate for some relief. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. She needed. The door chime sounded, making her freeze. Vera held her breath, hoping whoever it was would go away. No such luck. The chime sounded again, followed by a concerned male voice. "Vera, it's Jim. Doc Seamers told me what happened. I just wanted to see if you're okay." Jim, her commanding officer and closest friend on the ship, the last person she wanted to see her like this. But the sound of his voice, usually so steady and reassuring, sent a fresh wave of desire crashing through her. Vera bit her lip, hard enough to draw blood. She knew she should send him away, claim exhaustion, anything but. She'd always harbored a secret attraction to the ruggedly handsome captain. Many a lonely night cycle, she'd fantasized about his strong hands on her, his firm body pressing her into the mattress. Those illicit fantasies came rushing back now, making her head spin and her core clench with need. Before she could second-guess herself, Vera staggered to the door and opened it. Jim stood there, his dark brows drawn together in concern, full lips turned down at the corners. His gaze swept over her, taking in her disheveled state, the thin sheen of sweat coating her blue-tinged skin. When his eyes met hers, they widened in shock. "Vera, what?" She didn't let him finish. Grabbing a fistful of his shirt, she dragged him into the room, sealing the door shut behind him. Jim stumbled but quickly righted himself. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Seamers said you needed to rest." "What I need," Vera panted, advancing on him, "is you." Jim gaped at her, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Vera knew how she must look, her hair wild, her nipples straining against the thin fabric of her tank top, her arousal evident from the damp patch darkening the crotch of her panties. She looked like a female animal in heat, which was exactly what she was, thanks to that damn serum reacting with her alien biology. If Jim rejected her now, she didn't know what she would do. But as she watched, Jim's expression morphed from shocked to speculative to hungry. His dark eyes raked over her trembling body, zeroing in on her breasts, her hips, the juncture of her thighs. When he met her gaze again, his irises were nearly black, eclipsed by blown pupils. "Are you sure about this?" Jim asked, his voice low and rough. "I don't want to take advantage." "I've never been more sure of anything," she said fiercely, stepping into his space. She ran a bold hand down his chest, feeling the solid muscles beneath. "I want you, Jim. I need you. Please." He muttered a curse, his controls snapping. Large hands seized her hips, driving her flush against him. Vera could feel the thick ridge of his arousal pressing insistently against her belly, making her head swim with want. Then his mouth was on hers, hot and demanding. Vera opened for him eagerly, tangling her tongue with his as her hands fisted in his short hair. Jim kissed like he did everything else, with single-minded focus and intensity. It stole her breath and made her knees weak. He walked them backwards until the edge of the mattress hit the backs of her thighs. Vera tumbled onto the bed, taking Jim with her. The delicious weight of him settled over her as he nestled between her thighs. She could feel the hard length of him pressing right where she needed him most, making her hips buck restlessly. "Vera," Jim groaned against her neck. "You're so hot. I've wanted you for so long." His words inflamed her further, knowing he desired her maybe as much as she'd secretly lusted after him. It made her feel powerful and sexy and desperate all at once. "Then take me," she demanded breathlessly. "I'm yours." Jim made a rough sound, and then he was kissing her again, his lips scorching a path down her throat as his hands pushed impatiently at her clothes. Vera arched helpfully so he could strip her tank top off, baring her breasts to his avid gaze. He lavished attention on the sensitive mounds, his every touch stoking the unexpected consequences. Viara lay in the dim light of her quarters, the room bathed in a soft blue glow from the control panels. Her breath came in ragged gasps as Jim's body pressed into hers, the friction of their bare skin against each other igniting sensations she hadn't anticipated. The initial urgency and desperation gave way to a deeper, more primal connection as they moved together. Jim's lips explored her neck and collarbone, his hands mapping out her curves with an intense focus that sent shivers of pleasure through her. Viara clung to him, her nails digging into his back as she reveled in the forbidden intimacy. The need that had driven her to this point was finally being met, and it was intoxicating. For a moment, everything else faded away: the ship, the mission, even the ache of the serum's side effects. It was just Jim and her, and the raw, unfiltered connection they were sharing. When the passion finally began to subside, Jim pulled back, his eyes dark with an emotion that was more than just lust. He looked at Viara with a mixture of concern and something else, something she couldn't quite place. His expression was tender, almost conflicted. "Viara," he said softly, brushing a lock of her hair from her face, "are you okay? Did I hurt you?" Viara shook her head, trying to catch her breath. "No, Jim, you didn't hurt me. I needed this. I needed you." Jim nodded, but there was a trace of hesitation in his eyes. "I'm glad I could help, but this is going to be complicated. We need to be careful, if anyone finds out." "I know," Viara interrupted, sitting up and pulling the covers over her. "I don't want anyone to know. This was a personal issue. We'll keep it between us." Jim seemed to relax a little at her words, but his concern didn't entirely disappear. He helped her straighten her disheveled clothes and kissed her gently on the forehead. "Let me know if you need anything, okay? And be careful. I don't want you to get hurt." Viara nodded, watching as he left the room. She knew he was right. Things were going to be complicated. Their brief encounter, while intensely satisfying, could have unforeseen consequences. She needed to think about the future and how to navigate the delicate balance between her duties as a soldier and her personal desires. As Jim's footsteps faded away, Viara sank back onto the bed, her mind racing. The haze of the serum's effects had started to recede, leaving her with a lingering sense of clarity and apprehension. She had crossed a line, and now she had to deal with the aftermath. In the quiet of her cabin, she tried to refocus on the practical matters at hand. Her initial plan had been to keep this incident a secret, but the more she thought about it, the more complicated things seemed. She had to address the lingering effects of the serum and ensure her condition wouldn't jeopardize her role on the ship. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, signaling an incoming message. Viara's heart skipped a beat as she saw the sender's name, Dr. Seamers. Reluctantly, she opened the message, bracing herself for what might come next. "Viara," the message began, "I've been reviewing your condition and the data from the med bay. I need you to come in for a follow-up check. It's important we monitor how the serum is interacting with your system, and there might be additional treatments we need to consider." Viara read the message several times, her anxiety mounting. A follow-up check meant more scrutiny, more chances for her secret to be discovered. She needed to find a way to manage her condition discreetly while continuing to fulfill her duties. Determined to avoid further complications, Viara decided to take immediate action. She needed to ensure that the side effects of the serum were under control and that her personal situation didn't compromise her position on the ship. She resolved to visit the med bay under the guise of a routine checkup, hoping to address any lingering issues without drawing unwanted attention. Gathering her resolve, Viara dressed and headed to the med bay. The corridors of the ship were eerily quiet, the usual hum of machinery and distant conversations muted. Her thoughts swirled with the weight of the situation, and she felt a sense of isolation despite the close proximity of her crewmates. When she arrived at the med bay, Dr. Seamers was waiting for her. His expression was as professional as ever, but there was a flicker of concern in his eyes when he saw her. "Viara, good to see you," he said. ushering her into the examination room. "Let's get started on your follow-up. How are you feeling?" Viara took a deep breath, forcing a calm demeanor. "I'm managing, doctor. The symptoms have subsided somewhat, but I'd like to be sure everything is under control." Dr. Seamers nodded, guiding her to the examination table. As he began his assessment, Viara couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a tightrope, trying to keep a secret while navigating the complexities of her condition and her interactions with the crew. Throughout the examination, Dr. Seamers conducted his tests with a meticulous attention to detail. He examined her vitals, checked the readings from various sensors, and monitored her hormone levels. Viara remained silent, her mind racing as she tried to gauge the outcome of the examination. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Seamers finally finished his assessment and turned to her with a serious expression. "Viara, the good news is that your body is gradually stabilizing. The serum's effects are diminishing, and there's no immediate danger. However, we'll need to continue monitoring you closely for any lingering issues." Viara let out a sigh of relief, though she remained cautious. "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your help. I'll do whatever it takes to ensure this doesn't interfere with my duties." Dr. Seamers gave her a reassuring nod. "I trust you'll handle it well. Just remember, if you experience any more symptoms or need assistance, don't hesitate to reach out." As Viara left the med bay, she felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. She had managed to get through the immediate crisis, but the situation was far from resolved. She needed to stay vigilant and navigate her personal and professional challenges with care. Back in her cabin, Viara reflected on the events of the past few hours. The encounter with Jim had been intense and fulfilling, but it had also left her with a sense of uncertainty about the future. She needed to balance her responsibilities and her personal desires while ensuring that her actions didn't jeopardize her position or the mission. As she prepared for the next phase of her duties, Viara resolved to face the challenges ahead with the same determination and resilience that had guided her throughout her career. She was a soldier, a member of a diverse crew, and she would navigate the complexities of her situation with strength and adaptability. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but Viara was ready to confront whatever came her way. Unraveling the mystery, Viara's days began to blend together in a haze of routine and vigilance. The incident with Jim had left her feeling conflicted, but she pushed through her lingering doubts and focused on her duties. The crew continued their mission, unaware of the turmoil she faced. One morning, as Viara prepared for her shift, a notification on her comms device caught her attention. It was a message from Dr. Seamers. The subject line read, "Urgent follow-up on serum effects." Viara's heart raced as she opened the message. Dr. Seamers had requested an urgent meeting with her in the med bay. She quickly dressed and made her way to the medical area, her thoughts a jumble of concern and curiosity. Upon arriving, she found Dr. Seamers waiting for her. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with a more serious expression. He gestured for her to follow him into an examination room. "Viara, thank you for coming so quickly," Dr. Seamers said, closing the door behind them. "I've been reviewing the data from your previous examination, and there are some discrepancies we need to address." Viara's anxiety spiked. "What kind of discrepancies?" Dr. Seamers began to explain, his tone focused and methodical. "The initial tests indicated that your body was stabilizing, but recent scans show unusual activity in your hormone levels. It appears that the serum might have had a more profound impact on your physiology than we initially thought." Viara's heart sank. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to investigate further," Dr. Seamers said. "I'm concerned that the serum could have long-term effects we haven't accounted for. We need to run additional tests to determine the full extent of its impact on you." Viara nodded, though she felt a knot of dread in her stomach. The idea of undergoing more tests was unsettling, but she understood the necessity. Dr. Seamers began preparing the equipment for the additional analysis, and Viara took a seat on the examination table, trying to calm her nerves. As the tests progressed, Viara's thoughts drifted back to her encounter with Jim. She had kept their interaction a secret, but the complications it had caused were starting to weigh heavily on her. She needed to address the issue before it spiraled out of control. When the tests were complete, Dr. Seamers reviewed the results and turned to Viara with a thoughtful expression. The data confirms that the serum has altered your hormonal balance more significantly than expected. It's affecting your overall physiological response. Viara's brow furrowed. What does that mean for me? Is there a treatment? Dr. Seamers sighed. There are some treatments we can try to help stabilize your hormone levels. However, given the unique nature of your physiology, we might need to tailor the treatment specifically for you. It's going to take time and careful monitoring. Viara's heart sank further. And what if we can't stabilize it? Dr. Seamers hesitated before answering. There could be long-term implications, but I want to assure you that we'll do everything we can to address it. Your well-being is our priority. Viara appreciated his reassurance, but the uncertainty of the situation left her feeling uneasy. Thank you, Doctor. I'll follow your recommendations and keep you updated on any changes. As she left the medbay, Viara's mind raced with the implications of the new information. The possibility of long-term effects was daunting, and she felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She needed to find a way to manage her condition discreetly while continuing to fulfill her role on the ship. Back in her quarters, Viara tried to focus on her tasks, but her thoughts kept returning to her encounter with Jim. The secrecy of their interaction and the potential consequences of her condition were beginning to take a toll on her. She knew she needed to talk to Jim about their situation, but she was unsure of how to approach the subject without drawing unwanted attention. As she contemplated her next steps, the ship's communication system buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Jim, requesting a private meeting. Viara's heart skipped a beat. She had been avoiding him since their encounter, unsure of how to face him without revealing too much. Nevertheless, she knew she had to address the situation and clarify their standing. She agreed to the meeting and soon found herself in Jim's quarters. He greeted her with a warm but concerned smile. "Viara, thanks for coming," Jim said, gesturing for her to sit. "I wanted to check in and see how you're doing. We haven't had a chance to talk since everything happened." Viara nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "I appreciate you checking in. I've been dealing with some ongoing issues related to the serum. Dr. Seamers is monitoring my condition, but it's been a challenge." Jim's expression shifted to one of genuine concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." Viara hesitated before speaking. "There is something you can do. We need to keep our interactions discreet. The serum has caused complications, and I don't want to risk drawing attention or creating problems for either of us." Jim's brows furrowed as he listened. "I understand. We need to be careful. I'm here for you, and we'll handle this together." Viara felt a surge of relief at his words. "Thank you, Jim. Your support means a lot. We'll figure this out and get through it." The conversation left Viara with a renewed sense of determination. She knew she couldn't let the complications of the serum interfere with her mission or her personal life. With Jim's support and the ongoing care from Dr. Seamers, she was determined to navigate the challenges ahead with resilience and resolve. As she returned to her duties, Viara's thoughts were filled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but she was prepared to face them head-on. With her crew by her side and her own inner strength guiding her, she was ready to confront whatever came her way. The rising tension days passed, and the ship continued its journey through the vast expanse of space. Viara Tan's determination to manage her condition discreetly was tested daily as the symptoms of the serum remained unpredictable. The crew was unaware of her struggles, but the tension on the ship was palpable. The mission's success depended on their ability to work together seamlessly, and Viara was determined not to let her personal issues jeopardize that. One evening, as Viara was preparing to report for her shift, An urgent notification flashed on her comms device. It was a message from the ship's commander, Captain Harlow, requesting an immediate briefing. Vara's stomach churned with anxiety. She hadn't been expecting any major updates and wondered if her recent issues were somehow related. She arrived at the briefing room, where the senior officers were already gathered. Captain Harlow, a stern but fair leader, looked up as Viara entered. "Viara, thanks for joining us on short notice," Captain Harlow said, nodding in acknowledgement. "We've received some troubling intelligence about potential threats in our path. I need everyone's full attention and expertise to address this." Viara took her seat, her mind racing as the captain continued. "Recent scans indicate an increase in hostile activity near our course. We've detected several unknown ships operating in the vicinity, and it's imperative that we assess the situation and prepare for any potential encounters." The briefing went on, detailing the specifics of the threat and outlining the necessary preparations. Vara's focus was split between absorbing the information and managing her own mounting anxiety. The potential for conflict heightened her stress, which in turn exacerbated her condition. When the meeting ended, Viara made her way back to her quarters, her mind heavy with the weight of the briefing. She knew she needed to prepare for the potential confrontation, but the thought of facing it while dealing with her physiological challenges was overwhelming. As she entered her quarters, Jim was waiting for her. His expression was a mix of concern and resolve. "Viara, we need to talk," Jim said, stepping closer. "The briefing was intense, and I can see that you're struggling. We're going to need every bit of focus and strength from everyone on the team. Are you okay?" Viara sighed, her defenses crumbling under his concern. "I'm doing my best, Jim. The serum's effects are still unpredictable, and it's taking everything I have to manage it while staying focused on our mission." Jim's eyes softened. "We're in this together. Whatever you're dealing with, we'll face it as a team, but you need to let me help you. We can't afford any distractions or complications, especially with the threats we're facing." Viara nodded, appreciating his support. "I know, Jim. I'll do everything I can to stay on top of things, but I need to keep this under control for both our sakes." Jim placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this. Let's focus on our preparations and tackle the challenges ahead. We can handle whatever comes our way." With renewed determination, Viara set about her tasks. The preparations for potential conflict were extensive, and she threw herself into her work with a focus that helped keep her condition in check. The crew worked tirelessly, conducting drills and refining their strategies. As the days wore on, the tension on the ship grew. Every alert and scan seemed to confirm the increased presence of hostile forces. The crew was on high alert, their anxiety palpable. Viara, despite her personal struggles, remained a crucial part of the team, contributing her expertise and maintaining a facade of composure. One night, as she was preparing for her shift, a sudden alert flashed on the ship's communications system. The hostile ships were closing in, and the crew needed to be ready for a potential engagement. Viara's heart raced as she rushed to the command center. Captain Harlow's voice echoed through the ship's intercom. "All hands, prepare for immediate combat readiness. We have multiple unidentified ships approaching. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." Viara joined the crew in the command center, her pulse quickening as the reality of the situation set in. The ship's crew worked with practiced efficiency, preparing for the impending confrontation. Viara's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, balancing her need to manage her condition while ensuring she was fully engaged in the mission. Jim was at her side, his presence a steadying influence. "Viara, remember what we discussed. Stay focused, and let's get through this together." As the hostile ships drew nearer, the crew braced for action. Viara's hands moved deftly over the controls, her training taking over as she worked to support the ship's defensive systems. The tension in the command center was electric, the crew's concentration palpable. The first contact with the hostile ships came swiftly. The ship jolted as enemy fire hit the shields. Vara's heart pounded as she coordinated with the team, her focus solely on the task at hand. The ship's defense systems roared to life, countering the incoming attacks. The battle was intense, with the ship taking hits and the crew working feverishly to maintain their defenses. Vara's training and determination were put to the test as she navigated the chaotic environment, her mind sharp despite the lingering effects of the serum. Amidst the chaos, she managed to maintain her composure, her actions precise and calculated. The crew responded to her commands with professionalism, their efforts combining to keep the ship's defenses intact. As the engagement continued, Viara felt a surge of adrenaline, a brief respite from her internal struggles. The battle tested the crew's resolve, but they fought with determination and skill. The hostile ships were pushed back, their threat mitigated for the time being. When the immediate danger had passed and the ship's systems were stabilized, the crew took a moment to catch their breath. The battle had been fierce, but they had prevailed. Viara, though exhausted, felt a sense of accomplishment. Jim approached her, his expression one of relief and admiration. "You did great out there, Viara. Despite everything you're dealing with, you were a crucial part of our success." Viara smiled warily. "Thank you, Jim. I couldn't have done it without the support of the crew and your guidance." As the ship settled into a cautious calm, Viara took a moment to reflect on the events. The confrontation had been a trial, but she'd have faced it with resilience and strength. The ongoing challenges of her condition remained, but she was determined to continue managing them while fulfilling her role on the ship. With the immediate threat dealt with, Viara prepared to focus on her recovery and continued efforts to stabilize her condition. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but with the support of her crew and her own inner strength, she was ready to face whatever came next. Unexpected allies. As the ship resumed its course, the crew settled back into their routine, the aftermath of the confrontation still fresh in their minds. Viara Tan, while recovering from the intense battle and managing her condition, found herself reflecting on the events and preparing for what lay ahead. The crew's unity had been tested, but their resilience and determination had seen them through the crisis. One day, as Viara was working in the ship's lab, a soft chime indicated an incoming communication. It was a transmission from a nearby spacecraft, one that appeared to be in distress. The message was garbled, but the urgency in the signal was clear. Captain Harlow called an impromptu meeting in the briefing room. The senior officers gathered, including Viara, to discuss the situation. The flickering image of the distressed ship appeared on the screen. "We've received a distress signal from an unidentified ship," Captain Harlow began, his voice steady. "The transmission is fragmented, but it's clear that they need help. Given the current threats in the area, we need to be cautious, but we can't ignore a call for aid." The crew exchanged concerned glances. The decision to investigate could be risky, especially with the ongoing threat from hostile forces. However, the ethical imperative to assist those in need was a powerful motivator. Viara raised her hand, her voice resolute. "Captain, if we decide to respond to this distress signal, we should proceed with caution. I can assist in analyzing the transmission and preparing for any potential risks." Captain Harlow nodded. "Very well, Viara. We'll need a team to investigate the ship and assess the situation. I'm counting on your expertise to guide us through this." As Viara and her team prepared to board the distressed ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. The transmission had been garbled, and the ship's unknown origin added an extra layer of uncertainty. The team boarded a small shuttle and made their way to the distressed ship, which was now drifting in space. The exterior was battered, suggesting it had been through a rough time. Vara's heart pounded as they approached, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. The shuttle docked with the other ship, and the team entered through an airlock. The interior was dark and eerily quiet, the signs of damage and disarray evident. As they proceeded through the corridors, Viara's instincts were on high alert. The team finally reached the ship's control room, where they found a small group of survivors huddled together. They were a mix of various alien species, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. Vira's eyes met theirs, and she could see the desperation in their expressions. "Thank you for coming," one of the survivors said, a tall, green-skinned alien with an aura of authority. "We're grateful for your assistance. We've been stranded here for days with limited resources and no way to call for help." Viara nodded, trying to reassure them. "We'll get you the help you need. First, we need to understand what happened and how we can assist you." The green-skinned alien introduced himself as Commander Thorn of the Cytherian Coalition. He explained that their ship had been attacked by unknown aggressors, leaving them in a dire situation. They had managed to send out a distress signal, but the damage to their systems had rendered their communications almost useless. As Viara and her team worked to assess the damage and provide aid, a sense of camaraderie began to develop between them and the survivors. Despite the initial tension, the shared goal of survival and recovery forged a bond between the two groups. Viara discovered that the Cytherians had valuable intelligence about the hostile forces in the area. Their ship had been researching the same threats that the crew of Viara's ship had encountered. This information could prove crucial in understanding and countering the danger they faced. Commander Thorn offered to share the data with Viara's crew in exchange for their assistance in repairing their ship and providing necessary supplies. The offer was met with relief, as it presented an opportunity to gain critical insights into the hostile forces and strengthen their position. Back on the ship, Viara worked closely with Commander Thorn and his team, analyzing the data and collaborating on the repairs. The process was slow but steady, with each team member contributing their expertise to the effort. As they worked together, Viara found herself developing a respect for the Cytherians. Despite their dire circumstances, they were resilient and resourceful. The collaboration was proving to be a valuable exchange of knowledge and skills. One evening, as the work continued, Viara and Commander Thorn shared a quiet moment in the ship's lounge. The atmosphere was relaxed, and the tension of the past days seemed to ebb away. "Viara," Thorn said, his voice soft, "I want to thank you and your crew for everything you've done. We wouldn't have made it without your help." Viara smiled, appreciating the sentiment. "It's been a challenging time for both of our crews, but working together has been a reminder of the strength and resilience we all possess." Thorn nodded in agreement. "Sometimes it's in the face of adversity that we find our greatest allies. Your crew has shown incredible bravery and compassion, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with you." As the repairs neared completion, the bond between the two groups strengthened. The Cytherians had become unexpected allies, their shared experiences and mutual support enriching both crews' understanding and capabilities. The time came for the Cytherians to return to their ship, now repaired and ready for continued exploration. Viara and her team bid them farewell, knowing that their collaboration had been more than just a matter of survival. It had been a meaningful partnership forged in the crucible of adversity. As the Cytherian ship departed, Viara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead remained fraught with challenges, but the strength and unity demonstrated through their unexpected alliance had bolstered her confidence. With the newfound intelligence and support from their allies, Viara and her crew prepared to face the continuing threats in their path. The unexpected encounter had provided not only valuable information, but also a reminder of the power of cooperation and the potential for unexpected allies to make a difference. As the ship resumed its course, Viara remained resolute in her commitment to the mission and her determination to overcome the personal and external challenges she faced. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to confront it with the strength and unity that had been reinforced through their shared experiences. Echoes of betrayal. The days that followed the Cytherian ship's departure were filled with a sense of renewed purpose and cautious optimism. The valuable intelligence obtained from Commander Thorn's crew provided crucial insights into the hostile forces lurking in their sector. Viara Tan and her team worked tirelessly to integrate this new data into their strategies, preparing for the potential threats that lay ahead. However, amid the flurry of activity, Viara couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. The unexpected alliance with the Cytharians had been a beacon of hope, but the tension that had accompanied their arrival and subsequent departure left her with a troubling question. Was there something more sinister at play? One evening, as Viara was reviewing the Cytharian data in her quarters, her comm system beeped with an incoming message. It was a secure transmission from Captain Harlow, requesting an urgent meeting in the briefing room. Viara's instincts told her that something significant was about to unfold. When Viara arrived at the briefing room, she found Captain Harlow and several senior officers gathered. The atmosphere was tense, and Harlow's expression was one of grave concern. "Viara," Captain Harlow began, his voice somber. "We need to discuss an alarming development. Shortly after the Cytharian ship departed, we intercepted a transmission that appears to be from the same hostile forces we've been tracking. The message was encrypted, but our analysts managed to decrypt part of it." He activated the holoprojector, displaying a series of cryptic images and fragmented text. The transmission hinted at a plot involving sabotage and betrayal, and Viara's heart sank as she read through the deciphered content. "It seems that the Cytharians were not just innocent victims," Harlow continued. "There's evidence suggesting that they may have been involved in activities that are connected to our current threats. We need to investigate this further." Viara's mind raced as she processed the implications. If the Cytharians had been involved in something more sinister, it could mean that their recent alliance was part of a larger, more complex scheme. The thought was unsettling, and Viara couldn't help but feel a pang of betrayal. "Captain," Viara said, her voice steady despite her concern, "if the Cytharians are indeed involved, we need to consider the possibility that their true motives were hidden from us. We should review all the data and communications they shared with us to identify any discrepancies or hidden agendas." Harlow nodded in agreement. "I want you to lead the investigation into this matter. Review the data, interview the crew, and assess any potential security breaches. We need to get to the bottom of this before it's too late." Viara set to work immediately, assembling a team of trusted officers and analysts to delve into the Cytharian data. The task was daunting, as they combed through hours of transmissions, logs, and technical documents, searching for any signs of deception or hidden motives. As the investigation progressed, Viara's unease grew. There were indications of unusual patterns in the data, including encrypted messages and coded references that didn't align with the Cytharians' claimed objectives. It became clear that something was being concealed, but the exact nature of the deception remained elusive. During the investigation, Viara also interviewed several crew members who had interacted closely with the Cytharians. One of the most troubling revelations came from Lieutenant Dre, who had been part of the team that worked on the repairs with the Cytharian engineers. "Lieutenant," Viara asked during the interview, "did you notice anything unusual during the time you spent with the Cytharian crew? Any behavior that seemed out of place or conversations that seemed coded?" Dre hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "There was something strange, now that you mention it. Some of the Cytharian engineers were unusually secretive when they worked on certain systems. I thought it was just their way of handling sensitive equipment, but it could have been more." Viara's mind raced as she considered the implications. The secrecy surrounding the Cytharians' work could indicate that they had been tampering with critical systems or hiding something crucial. It was a disturbing thought, especially considering the trust and cooperation they had extended to their allies. The investigation reached a turning point when the team uncovered a hidden transmission log within the Cytharian data. The log contained messages between high-ranking Cytharian officials and unknown parties, discussing a covert operation that seemed to involve sabotage of Allied ships and espionage. The revelation was shocking. If the Cytharians had indeed been involved in such activities, it meant that their previous assistants had been part of a calculated maneuver to further their own hidden agenda. Viara's sense of betrayal deepened, and she struggled with the realization that their recent allies might have been working against them all along. Captain Harlow convened an emergency meeting to discuss the findings. The crew was gathered, their faces etched with a mix of disbelief and concern as Viara and her team presented the evidence. We've uncovered evidence suggesting that the Scytharians were involved in activities that pose a significant threat to our mission and our safety, Viara said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We need to take immediate action to safeguard ourselves and assess the full extent of the threat. Harlow addressed the crew with a firm resolve. We can't afford to be caught off guard. We'll increase our security measures, review all communications and alliances, and remain vigilant. Trust must be earned, and we must be prepared for any eventuality. As the crew began to implement heightened security protocols and assess their options, Viara couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that had settled over her. The recent events had tested their unity and resilience, but it was clear that their journey was far from over. With the looming threat of sabotage and deception, Viara and her team prepared for the next phase of their mission. The sense of camaraderie that had been forged with the Scytharians was now overshadowed by the need for caution and vigilance. The road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but Viara remained determined to navigate the challenges and protect her crew from any further betrayal. Shadows of reconciliation. As the crew of the Aegis tightened security and prepared for potential threats, Viara Tan found herself grappling with the complexities of their situation. The sense of betrayal had cast a shadow over their recent achievements, and the lingering question of how to address the Scytharian threat weighed heavily on her mind. Despite the heightened tension, Viara knew that the crew needed to focus on their mission and maintain their resolve. The discovery of the Scytharian deception had underscored the importance of vigilance and trust, and it was crucial to rally the crew and ensure they remained united in their efforts. Captain Harlow called for a briefing to address the crew and outline their next steps. The meeting was held in the main conference room, and the atmosphere was one of cautious determination. As the crew gathered, Harlow stepped to the podium, his expression resolute. "Crew," Harlow began, his voice steady. "We faced a serious challenge with the recent revelations about the Scytharians. Their actions have jeopardized our mission and our safety. However, we must not allow ourselves to be consumed by distrust. Instead, we need to reaffirm our commitment to each other and our mission." Viara stood beside Harlow, nodding in agreement. "The evidence we've uncovered has been troubling, but it's essential that we move forward with clear eyes and a united front. We have the capability and the resilience to overcome this challenge." Harlow's gaze swept over the assembled crew. "Our immediate priority is to strengthen our defenses and continue our mission with increased vigilance. We'll also work to reassess our alliances and ensure that we are prepared for any contingencies." The crew responded with determined nods and murmurs of agreement. The sense of camaraderie that had been tested by recent events was now being reforged as the crew rallied together to face the uncertainties ahead. In the days that followed, Viara worked closely with her team to implement new security measures and review their operational protocols. The data they had gathered from the Scytharian transmission was used to refine their strategies and identify potential vulnerabilities. The crew's morale was bolstered by their collective effort and shared resolve. As they continued their preparations, Viara received an unexpected communication from a familiar source. It was a message from Commander Thorne, the leader of the Scytharian crew. The message was marked with a high level of urgency and was accompanied by a secure channel request for a direct meeting. Viara hesitated for a moment before accepting the request. The prospect of facing Thorne again was daunting, given the recent revelations, but she knew that understanding his perspective might offer valuable insights into the situation. The meeting was arranged in a secure conference room, and when Thorne arrived, he carried an air of quiet determination. Viara greeted him with a nod, and they took their seats across from each other. "Commander Thorne," Viara began, her voice measured. "We've reviewed the data and the transmissions from your ship. There are serious concerns regarding your involvement in activities that threaten our mission. I'd like to hear your side of the story." Thorne's expression remained calm as he began to speak. "Viara, I understand your concerns. The data you've uncovered is troubling, and I want to assure you that not all Cytherians are involved in the activities you've discovered. The information you have is part of a larger and more complex situation. He continued, explaining that there were factions within the Cytherian hierarchy with differing agendas. Some factions were indeed involved in covert operations and sabotage, but others were genuinely interested in establishing peaceful relations and cooperation with humanity. The Cytherian Empire is divided, Thorne said. There are those who seek to undermine alliances for their gain, while others, like myself, are working to build meaningful connections and prevent conflict. The recent events were a result of internal power struggles and not a reflection of the intentions of all Cytherians. Viara listened intently, weighing Thorne's words. The complexity of the situation was evident, and it was clear that there were layers of political intrigue and factionalism at play. While Thorne's explanation did not entirely absolve the Cytherians of their recent actions, it provided a broader context for understanding their motives. "Commander," Viara said, her tone cautious but open, "if what you're saying is true, then it's important for us to differentiate between the factions and understand who we can trust. How can we ensure that future interactions with the Cytherians are more transparent and secure?" Thorne nodded, acknowledging the importance of transparency. "I can offer to provide you with additional intelligence and facilitate direct communication with the factions that are aligned with peaceful cooperation. It's crucial for us to establish a clear line of dialogue to avoid further misunderstandings." Viara considered Thorne's offer carefully. The prospect of gaining more reliable information and fostering better communication with the Cytherian factions was an opportunity to strengthen their position and mitigate future risks. "We will take you up on that offer," Viara said, "but we will also remain vigilant and continue to verify any information we receive. Trust must be earned, and we will proceed with caution." Thorne acknowledged her response with a nod and a solemn expression. "I understand. We will do our part to rebuild trust and work towards a more transparent and cooperative relationship." The meeting concluded with a renewed sense of cautious optimism. Viara and Thorne agreed to collaborate on improving communication and intelligence sharing between their respective factions. The path forward would be challenging, but it was an opportunity to navigate the complexities of interstellar diplomacy with a focus on building genuine alliances. As the days turned into weeks, the crew of the Aegis continued their preparations and strengthened their defenses. The lessons learned from their recent experiences shaped their approach to future interactions and operations. Despite the uncertainties, the crew remained united in their determination to achieve their mission and safeguard their ship. The shadows of betrayal had been cast, but the light of reconciliation and cooperation offered a way forward. With renewed resolve and a commitment to navigating the challenges ahead, Viara Tan and her team prepared to face the unknown and forge a path toward a more hopeful future.